You're watching 24/7 Live Culture.
Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Again, it's Synoria's Best Kept Secret podcast, and we're welcoming our guest. Now, I call her Safiya,
Mhm.
and I
Yes.
love saying it, but that's not her name. We're not going to start
Oh,
that.
that's
Only I
fine.
can do
That's
that.
totally fine.
No,
Actually, I respond to either version. That is a popular rendition, and I appreciate the cover. So,
the rendition, okay? Remix.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Exactly.
But
It's
for the people that don't know of you, go ahead and let them know your name for the record.
sure. My name is Safiya Songhai, and it can
I love
also be
that.
pronounced
Your
Safiya.
name is so beautiful to me. I don't know. I just kept messing with you. Okay, so a little backstory, guys. I met Safiya at the Orlando Urban Film Festival where she was premiering her film, and the energy was just there. We vibed, and I wanted to get her on the podcast. So I'm just ecstatic that she's here tonight and that we're able to talk because she is a busy woman. You are a busy woman.
A busy woman. That's where Safiya needs to come out. It's like that's the other version. We're in a different gear shift now. So yeah.
Right. Yes. Well, I mean, I know, but they don't know. So tell us a little bit about, what you've been doing this past week because you just came from another festival,
Oh,
correct?
right. Yeah. So I just came back from the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, which is held in Palm Springs. It's also an Oscar qualifying festival, and it is one of the top 100 film festivals in the country. So I directed, I edited, and I produced a film entitled Interception, Jane Kennedy, American Sportscaster. And it did premiere in Orlando, Florida, from the wonderful people at the Orlando Urban Film Festival. And that is where I met the best kept secret. Oh, what? Yes. And it
So
was
much fun that night.
the
Yes,
most
it was
fun
a
interview ever. It was such a fun interview with you.
oh,
So
thank you. And I
yes.
remember us saying that and exchanging, those vibes and just saying, we have to connect again. We have to connect again.
Absolutely.
So here we are. I'm happy for that. So
Mhm.
let's get right into that, right? Tell us about this documentary, about this project. Like, what drew you to Jane Kennedy?
So ultimately, there are very few biopics made about Black women, ultimately, right? So the number of biopics that are backed by big industry, big studios and all that. It's really like kind of like what's love got to do with it? That's probably the only one that we can really think of. Maybe the Harriet Tubman film that just came out a few years ago. And after that, we're not even at 10 films, right? So like a while ago, I reached out to Jane Kennedy because I was interested in making a biopic about her. And I was in school and I was really interested in creating something that was as epic as the Tina Turner's What's Love Got to Do with It.
Okay.
But then many
Wow.
years passed and lots of things happened in life and all that. And I saw a grant from the Arizona State Global Sports Initiative, I believe that's called Global Sports Program, something like that. And then also the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. They were working in tandem to get $10,000 to three African American filmmakers to make a story about sports. Now, I'm definitely not a person who knows anything about sports, but I'm a journalist, right? So I'm a journalist. I became really curious. I was like, oh, I wonder who the first Black woman sportscaster was. I wonder, when did that happen? Did it happen in the 80s, the 90s? It probably couldn't have happened in the 2000s. I'm pretty sure I saw, Black women in the 90s, as a sportscaster. So I was like, well, was it Melissa Ford or was it Robin Roberts? Was it someone else that I, was not promoted heavily? So I just Googled it very simply, and it was also Jane Kennedy. So Jane Kennedy is an actress from the Black exploitation era. She's a model. She's used to be a spokesperson for Coca-Cola. She's produced her own film. She's won Image Award for acting in Body and Soul. She was a Miss
Wow.
USA candidate and first African American woman to ever compete from the state of Ohio. And she ended up in the top 15 in the year 1970. So I knew her as a very successful, Miss USA candidate who pushed that
Minute. So
whole.
talk about
Yeah,
Whitney Houston's "I'm Every Woman." I
yeah,
mean, wow. And I do know, you shared a little bit of, that information with me, and I was blown away because, I didn't know this. We don't
yeah.
know this. So let me ask you that. Let's just, back up a bit. When you are able to present this triumphant woman, this story of success, these different barriers that she's broken down, how many, what would you say is the percentage of people that are like, didn't know of Jane Kennedy or astonished by the story?
So people who are 50 years old and older, they do know who Jane Kennedy is because and they get a very far away look in their eye. They
Okay.
all have a personal relationship with her rising into fame.
Okay.
So anyone who's 50 or over, they could have been a child when she was, 30 years old, and they still remember the impact that Jane Kennedy had on their life. And so because what it was is that she was just everywhere. She was on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. She was on the Dean Martin show, and she's very tall. She's a 5'10", 5'11", woman, very physically beautiful woman, and has an allure about her. It's not just what, how her facial features came all together. It's also her allure. She has this, her voice and her mannerisms, everything about her. You can't look away. And she's very pro-Black, and she's very pro-Black in a way that is sort of unexpected, right? So
Okay.
she's pro-Black in a way that is, so the way that she looks, people oftentimes would like to credit her look to being mixed, and she's like, no, I'm African American. Like, she's very
Oh,
clear that she's a
I
part
didn't
of this
know, because
group.
yeah, I would think the same thing. She's very, not saying, I
Of
mean,
course.
because we are gorgeous and we come
Yeah,
in,
yes,
all
absolutely.
shapes, sizes, hues. We know
Mhm,
this, right? But I
mhm.
too would have thought maybe she
Yeah.
had, a touch of this or a dab of that,
Well, and but both her parents are African American. That is what all African Americans have, other genetic contributions and all of that. But because she would always make sure that she let her people know, I'm on your side, I'm with you, right? And that's another reason that they loved her, because she very actively stated to her fan base, her growing fan base, that she loved them back. And so when I found out that she was the first African American sportscaster, I had to get the grant in, I think, in a matter of, I want to say, like 18 hours. I didn't even have a whole day.
Oh
Like, by the time I
wow.
saw it was in my inbox. And I was like, I gotta fill this out. And then I kept putting it off. And then eventually I was like, okay, wait a minute. I think the deadline's coming up. And I hadn't even gotten in touch with her yet. I just had to get the grant out, and based on whatever
Gotcha.
I found online. And
Well,
then
talk
3 days
about
later,
things lining up, because
yes,
18 hours, that's like a crunch. You know what I mean?
it
Especially
is.
I'm
And also,
sure
I didn't
that,
know the story. I didn't even know what the story was. I knew that she had achieved it, but I didn't know what the story was. And then 3 days later, she called me back, because I reached out to several people to get in touch with her. And the story that she told me versus what I found online was absolutely completely opposite. It was so much more pain and struggle and strife, and just
mm,
absolute,
right,
people backstabbing her left and right, and really very hurtful, that the people who are the first Black people to do something, that they have to go through this. And then
right,
the rest
of
of us just
course.
think, oh, well, we've always been here. No, we haven't always been anywhere. Like, there's not one thing. There's not one. I don't know if it was like, pushing a mop down the floor. I don't think we even had that opportunity all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, we did
Right,
not,
the
I don't care what.
struggle was real. Right, and we
It's
don't
like,
sometimes we
yeah,
don't
we
appreciate it
don't
because we
appreciate
don't
it.
know
Uh,
how blessed that we've
yeah.
become to enter into a space that, like you said, she had to fight so hard to
Yeah.
get into. So, can you tell us a little bit, because you said, of course, online everything looked fabulous and pretty, as much
It was
things
very
do, right?
successful. She looked like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm a winner. All I do is win no matter what. And it was
Right.
not that song. Like, it was just a world of trying. It's the same type of mind that we would have to escape slavery. It's the exact
Mm.
same type of, like, skill
Wow.
set. And because you're dealing with such complicated political issues, the people who have the key to the manacles and the chains on you,
Mhm.
they're the cause and the cure of your situation. They're the ones who put you in the manacles, and they're also the ones who are going to feed you.
Right.
Right? I mean, you're in that
It
situation.
is
So
what it is, right? It
yeah,
is
and
what
you're
it
like, well,
is.
how do I talk to this person who is, put me in this situation, and then at the same time is the only chance of me living another day? I mean, it's
Mm.
really, it's the same skill set that her grandparents and great grandparents had to have to survive, South Carolina, or
Mm.
the South in general. And then she was born in Washington, D.C., but she moved to Ohio with her family, and they have a large family. And they were a loving, warm, very encouraging family, but
Right.
she's the generation of people that she's a baby boomer, and she's one of the people who had to go test out these new affirmative action civil rights acts. These civil rights acts of the late 1960s, that happens when she's a teenager. And
Wow.
now, as a young adult, like an 18, 19, 20 year old, she's like, okay, can I live my dream America? You said the coast was clear, and
Right.
she
They say this
one
is
of
the
those
land of the free, the,
right.
and dreams come true, all
Mhm.
that good stuff. So speaking of, her being a, the generation that she came from, right? Because she grew up in a time, like you said, where the struggle was definitely real for many in their different industries. Can you kind of, I guess, attest or speak on her behalf as far as, getting this project together, some of those struggles that she had to overcome?
Well, I mean, ultimately, what you have to overcome is a fear, right? And the fear of man. That's really the first thing that you have to overcome. You have to realize that whatever your ability is not going to be just, you can't just use your human abilities. You're going to have to call on a greater source than that and a greater force than that.
Amen.
And so, and, and what you just said, like the struggle is real. The thing is, when she's 18 years old or around that age, like when she's a late teenager, Dr. King is being assassinated. Malcolm X is being assassinated. I mean, you're looking at people who are incredibly brave. We're not going to see those lives ever again.
Ever again.
Those types of people are not going to emerge on a regular basis,
Exactly.
and everything line up for them to be world leaders. And you're looking up to them, and then they're cut down. And now you have to make a decision: am I going to be a brave one? Because the same the same assassin is out there waiting for anybody who is
That's what I was
prepared
going to
to.
say. You bring up
Yeah.
an excellent point
Mhm.
because I guess and I'll just say for myself, I don't know about anybody else who's watching, but for myself, I would have never thought about it from that perspective because yeah, now you have to think about, am I able to stand strong in my beliefs and really, forge forward into the dreams that I have, but also at the risk of possible death,
Yeah.
harm, whether it's to
Possible death.
yourself, your family. That's a big decision. So she decided to move forward.
And she's moving forward obviously in a different arena than maybe what is people who are recognized as civil rights leaders in the way of Dr. King and Malcolm X and Fannie Lou Hamer and Angela Davis rather, and Kathleen Cleaver, Huey P. Newton, all of those people. I mean, certainly people
Right.
don't recognize that she is a civil rights leader, but I mean, I've written her and I've said, you are as important and as significant as
Right.
all of those people because of the way that she made Black people feel
And not
about
only
those
that,
leaders.
not to cut you
Yeah.
off, but listen, what do they
Mhm.
always say? And it doesn't matter what form of media, but
Right.
media rules the world.
Yes.
So she was
American
able
media
to
definitely
get
does.
into an industry
Mhm,
that, spoke to the masses and in a whole nother way, a whole nother language through
mhm,
sports, but, embodying, like you said, the pro blackness while
mhm.
being this beautiful creature at the same time and entering what would be typically considered a men's world. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah, yeah.
I commend her. Hats off. I just love all of the things that you've shared with her thus far. Let me ask
Mhm,
you this: how did she feel like after you contacted her? Right, you've done the
mhm.
project. She was able to see what you were able to do with the pieces of her story. Do you continue to speak with her regarding how you were able to make that come about, and
Well,
what
she
were
she
her
helped to
thoughts
make
on
the
that?
film. Yeah, I mean, she helped to make the film. So it wasn't just so she I sat down for with her for a 5-hour phone conversation, recorded, and then really just not just about this chapter of her life, but many chapters of her life, right? So, and because they all matter, they're all weaved together. I couldn't cover every aspect of her life in this film. It's a short documentary, but I was only covering a 2.5-year span of time. And
Mhm.
so, I had to create a storyline that explains who the antagonistic force is. And in this film, it's the blonde, right? So essentially, Jane is always going to auditions where they're looking for not just a white woman, but a blonde, like a
Mm,
blonde white woman, a very specific type of white woman. So she's not just going up against other, women. She's consistently the only Black person going up for anything, unless she's in the Black exploitation, Black film, world. Then you're going up against Black women who look as identical to you as anyone could possibly look. You're going to cattle call auditions where you
yeah.
walk in the room and there's 100 people who could be your twin sister. And you're like,
Right.
what? I mean, you don't
True.
stand out at all
It's
whatsoever. And
true.
so I remember in the longer interview, the raw footage from the interview, she said, essentially that she would be in the same auditions. She would be in auditions with the exact same people over and over and over again for like one role that they would give a Black woman every year. And the Black
It's definitely true
yeah.
because I kind
Mhm.
of spoke about that in one of my previous conversations that you kind of get familiar with
Mhm.
who's going to be there when they're going to be there because they do. Like you said, a cattle call. You kind of have people that have your same height, your same mold, your same frame, and you guys kind of build this band, you know, this camaraderie for one another. You kind of become friends because it's like, hey, I saw you at the last one. Oh, we're back again. You know, that type of game. So I definitely understand that, you know,
But you're going for like one role, like you're going for
right,
one role a year.
right,
And the one role a year probably pays in like sandwiches and chips. You know what I mean? It's like they don't pay you anything. It's one role a year, and you're all fighting. I mean, in a way that, yes, you all are it's some sort of friendship, but you're also competition.
right.
And you're not friends because you like each other. You're friends because you end up in the same places going for
Right.
the same
That's
thing, you know. So, and but you're the only people who understand it. So that the friendship comes from understanding, you know, commiserating with each other, which is not a high vibration emotion, right? But then at the same time, it comes from, you know, there is this feeling that, okay, well, you know, we still have to try. I mean, the types of people who went after those roles at that time, I don't know what they were made out of. They're a whole different type of human being, because, you know, it's like I see people now who are like, I want to go into TV and film, I want to be an actor. And, you know, it's like, and they have no idea the level of effort that they, you know, people, but not, you know, even any level of long ago had to fight to get any type of, just to get on the air, not to get paid to be
right
on the air, just to be on the air.
on the
And
air. Yeah.
so, I mean, and that's what I wanted to show with this film in particular, after hearing her interview and hearing and just really sitting back and thinking, like, how can I make this better for her? How can I restore some of these things, you know, for this person who is very much here, very much active, happy, you know, resilient. You know, it shouldn't be that a Black woman has to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders
Right.
for her whole life. I mean, you know, the fact that she knocked it down for other people. You know, I used to be an anchor woman and a news reporter and a TV writer, a TV producer, and all that in New York City. And after doing all that, the same things that they were telling Jane, they were telling me. They were like, you know, you can't wear your hair natural, and you know, you need to make it straight. I just want the hair to go down. I remember my news director
Right.
saying, I just want the hair to go down. Just make it go down. Just make it go
Wow.
down. You know, and
And that's
everything.
crazy because that was a whole nother, like you said, a whole nother generation, a whole nother time period. So to fast forward to you in this industry to still go through those same things, it shows you that we haven't really come as far as we would hope, you know?
But we're not, and we're not going to. We're not. It's not the concept of us coming from somewhere to somewhere else is one that would be on dry land in some sort of advancing through a terrain. It's a playbook that people use against us. It's a playbook of, because we are always consistently going to be a lot of things in society as African descended people where we will automatically be more interesting. We will be incredibly attractive. We will be people who are fun to be around. We have a warmth. I mean,
Right.
it's just there's a warmth about us that in the world of storytelling, which is my industry, you know, we could, the concept that we can sing, we can dance, we can tell jokes. I mean, tell jokes, you know, we can act. I mean, all of that is nothing new. But if someone is in competition with that energy that is natural and intrinsic to who you are as a people, not as an individual, but as a people, then
Right.
they're always going to have to cheat. There, it doesn't matter if it was in 1924 or 1824 or 1724. It's irrelevant
You're right. You
because,
either have
yeah,
it or you don't. And a
it's
lot of
like,
times they don't. And they do. They borrow from us, whatever it is. We see it
or
all the
borrow,
time,
they
whether
take.
it's the
It's, I
music.
mean, you know, they didn't borrow us from Africa. Whatever they did to get us across this ocean is what they'll do to all of our natural talents and abilities, our intellect, the prize, our soul, our prize, right? And so the problem is that you only have a finite amount of time to be a human being in this realm, in a physical human body. And if you wait for the society to catch up, then, you know, your window will pass and your purpose that God gave you will not be, you know, realized to its height. And it will cause a great deal of frustration and confusion and anger and sadness and, you know, feeling like you were ripped off, because you were. And so this story about Jane Kennedy is that she's this person, you know, she decided my time is now, right
Right.
now. And whatever I got to do, you know, if I mean, and I really she's a Scorpio, and Scorpios, you can't stop a Scorpio from getting what
Exactly.
they want. They will find a way. They will, they will. I mean, I don't know. It's a whole different ball game, and they're the best people to put on the front lines of a revolution because they will push through. And I've seen other, you know, people. There are other, of course, other people, but this story
Right.
is relatable to many Black people in whatever industry you're in. If you, even if you're not the first, if you're one of the firsts,
Right.
if there's been a big gap between the first and now, like they would say, we had an African American person do something back in 1960, but we haven't had one since then. You're a
Right.
first all over again.
Exactly. It's
I
true.
mean,
It's true
it's
because it's been so much time in between. So now you
right.
have to go through those whole
All
struggles
over
and
again.
all of those fights
Yep.
all over again, which is sad, but like It's true. It's definitely
Well,
true.
and it is sad. It is sad in the sense that I like, this is why I said to her as well, and I've said to other people, is just like, the thing is, it's like people don't really think about the effect that this has on our health, like
Right.
our actual time on the planet. So we recognize that when people, aim weapons towards people like Dr. King and Malcolm X, we recognize the clear, direct, attack on their physical life. But what this does to people in terms of their cholesterol, their heart disease, their, all the diabetes, cancers, all these different things that form in our people, not even people who are exceptional and amazing, but just the regular Black person who's going to their regular job, having a, trying to just make it in this world, but everything is so stacked against them. But we're just made out of bone and tissue, and it's like, skin, bone, and muscle tissue. It's not any exceptional stuff, even though we are exceptional. That has to come from a spiritual force. It doesn't come from our physical body is not any stronger than anyone else's.
Right.
Our physical body is exactly made out of the same things as anybody else,
Everybody else is.
and it can be destroyed the same way. It comes about the same way. It emerges from our mother and father principle the same way. But what we have to then, the strength that people often try to assign to us is coming from a spiritual strength. That's what I definitely have learned from
Yeah,
Jane
that's
Kennedy's
true.
story, yes, and many others. And that's and she is a lot of things to a lot of people, but people don't really always recognize how invested she is in her relationship with her creator, with God. I mean, that's just 100% why I believe that she was able to do the things that she
Yeah.
ultimately has done and will continue to do. She's still very much like, for example, she recently
Mhm.
just hosted the pregame show for this past Super Bowl in 2024, which was the
Okay.
most watched Super Bowl in the history of American television.
Right.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
she has not hosted the Super Bowl since 1980. Okay. And
Wow.
they brought
Yes.
her back partially because they realized how they did her dirty. And she was able to speak on that during that broadcast. And then a couple weeks ago at the NAACP Image Awards, they gave her, she won an award in 1982 for Best Actress for a movie. She played a character named Brenda Withers in Winters rather, in Body and Soul.
Okay.
And the award had been stolen from her. And so they were able to give her a new one. They gave her a
What do you
new
mean
image award.
somebody actually took the
Stole her
award that
award.
she had
Yep.
in hand and
Mhm.
whenever they took it?
Well, someone stole it from her home. Like someone stole it from, like she
Oh
had
wow.
gotten it. She had it for several years. And then somebody in the course of moving, they stole, the moving
Mm,
people probably stole, someone in that process stole the award from her. And so she had the honor, but she didn't have the actual physical trophy. And so they reinstated that. And so all of this this has all happened since January of 2024.
wow.
My film was released at the summer of last year. And then it is, doing the festival circuit now. So people are learning about her story. They're learning about this particular chapter of her story. And the reason this chapter of her story is so important is because she became a crossover talent. She was Black famous, okay,
Right.
and that was a big part of it. And then, but when she went on CBS NFL Today, she became white famous. So white people knew who she was because they were watching football for sure.
Of
And she
course.
was the only, and she was, as soon as they click on to watch the game, they see this devastatingly beautiful woman, and they're like, "Whoa, who's that?" And she's the only woman on the show. So everyone else is a guy, and they're handsome too. But the other men watching the show were certainly paying attention to
Gone
Jane.
into her. Yes. Yes.
And so, and she did a fantastic job. And after that, her career skyrocketed. And my film does talk about, what happened after. But in addition to that, she went on to win an Emmy for the Rose Bowl Parade. She won an NAACP Image Award. A lot of different things. She's also the first woman to ever host a sports show. So a
Wow.
sports talk show. So there's a show called Greatest Sports Legends, which lasted for a long time. I want to say it lasted for like 10, 15 years. And I believe she hosted it for 7 years. So yeah, but she was the first woman, not first Black woman, first woman to ever host a talk show, of a sports talk show, which just gives even more credence to the fact that she was the right person for the job on
Right.
CBS NFL Today. She was the absolute right person. She wasn't just a pretty face. They interviewed 70 people for that role, and she was the only Black woman, only African American woman to audition. And in that, out of 70 people, she was the one. And they knew they canceled auditions after she came in. She came in the third round of interviews.
Wow. So
So
did she share with you, excuse me, what she thought really made her, I guess, pop amongst the rest, or what did she think sealed the deal?
sure. So her tactic in interviewing was to not just talk about the game. So most people were interviewing these different players about the game and what they did on the field and all that kind of stuff. And she was friends with a number of people in the sports arena. She was, certainly an established actress at this point. She had been working in the entertainment field for, I want to say, at least 5 to 8 years at this point in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, right? And
Mhm.
so she did know people, and she was connected in the sense that she could get somebody on the phone and all that. And mind you, there were Black quarterbacks in football at this point who were also first Black people. There were Black boxers. All the Black people who were the first ones were all friends with each other because
Of
they
course.
were all going through similar things in their respective pursuit of happiness, and they were being stabbed in the back too. So they were trying to help each other out as best as they could with whatever power and they're all coming from, working class homes and,
Right.
impoverished conditions and things like that. They all come from very humble beginnings, I should say. And now they're all, in their mid 20s, whatever, thrust into the limelight, and they're looking at each other as like, what do we do? How does this work? So, at the end of all of that, she was interviewing the person so in the interview, in the audition, they had them interview athletes. And then, but she stayed longer in there was like a waiting room for all the candidates to meet with the athletes. And she got some information about like what they were doing in terms of charity work, what they were doing in terms of their like social impact, right?
Okay.
And there, of course, if you're an athlete, you have a little bit of money and you're trying to go help the kids, help the homeless, help the schools, whatever you're trying to do, you really want to talk about that. You don't want to talk about the game. So when she went for the interview, she did her homework. She's a great journalist. She
Right.
sat back and she interviewed the people the person that they assigned her ahead of time. So when she went into the audition, the substance of the interview was so much stronger, so
Got
much
it.
stronger. And
Mm.
that's when they were like, oh yeah, it's obviously her. And everyone else was like, just asking very fluffy, lightweight questions. Because if you're a good interviewer, you do have to do some type of pre-interview.
Right.
And after that, you're able to know, what is how to frame your question for this specific person. And if you don't, then you're asking kind of general questions all the time. And it's just, it can be taught. You can be taught to be a great interviewer. She somehow, I think, just had it.
It was innate. It was
Yeah,
innate.
it was
It was
innate.
in her. Like I said, sometimes you either have it or you don't. And it sounds
Yes.
like she definitely had the goods. She knew how to
Mhm.
go about it, and she was able to go in and kill it. Which now we're able to, see this story and unfold.
Ready to turn your passion into a career? At 24/7 LC Film Academy, we offer acting, screenwriting, and filmmaking classes with multiple options including Zoom and in-person classes in Los Angeles. Apply now and join our community.
Where is it that right now we're able to watch your project or be a part of
Sure.
your project?
Well, the film is on the festival circuit right now, so I want people to go to a movie theater and see it larger than life. This is a film that I both directed and edited and produced and raised the money for. So it is a great deal of work. And so it will be they'll be in the Beverly Hills International Film Festival
Okay.
that is coming up. It'll be in the Cleveland International Film Festival, which is a Oscar qualifying film festival, and
Okay.
that is coming up next week. The Beverly Hills International Film Festival, the film will play at the Mann's Chinese Theater, which is the most well-known movie theater in America, and it's a big deal. It'll also be in the African Film Festival, New York. That's coming up. It'll be in New York again at the Coney Island Film Festival and Fresh Black Films, which is in Brooklyn, New York, and then it'll be in Black Girls Rock, which is in Atlanta, which is a huge event that is actually airs on Lifetime television. The film won't air on Lifetime television, but the award ceremony
Awards, I mean, yeah.
will be on Lifetime, and that is in June of 24. So those are some of the future festivals. And if there's any other festivals that would like to invite the film to
Exactly.
participate, I'm happy to, correspond with that. And we have been asked, the film has been asked to be a part of other festivals. And because the organizers have seen it elsewhere. And so, and at this point, it's been accepted to 90 film festivals. It's actually
That
96 film festivals, 96
is
film
great.
festivals. And it has
Yes.
won 36 awards, and it's been nominated for another 10 awards. So official selection at a film festival is already a really big deal. So like when you're in a film,
Exactly.
yeah, because some film festivals get like 2,000 submissions. The one I just came back from had 2,000 submissions. From those 2,000 submissions, they have to whittle it down to 200 that will be played, which is only
And you
10%.
made it in that number. So that means
Mhm,
not only are you representing a
mhm.
phenomenal woman, you're a phenomenal woman yourself. So give yourself a round of applause for breaking these doors down. I mean, my God,
Yeah.
2,000 to 200, that's something to celebrate about.
And
And
that's actually one of
you're
the
all
larger
of
ones.
them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've been in festivals that only accept 6% of the applicants. They'll have like 1,600 and they only accept 6%. So it's like consistently, you're in 10% or less. That's a and so there's black festivals and white festivals, right? So the black
Right.
festivals obviously are dealing with black themed films, and even those festivals only accept about 7% of the applicants if they're a larger festival that's been around for 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
And then but the white festivals, if I go to a white festival, I'm the only black director, I'm the only black woman, I'm the only woman, I'm the only, I mean, I was in the Palm Springs Festival on the first night. There weren't any black people in the opening night audience. It was
Wow.
there were like 800-ish people, somewhere between 7 to 800 people. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't expect there to be, tons, but zero. I mean, there were black people on the second day. There were black people, but and I'm sure there's probably a black director that I just was not aware of. But yeah, very frequently when I go to film festivals, I'm the only black director, period. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely
So
the only
you're
black
breaking
woman.
down your own barriers and entering into your own first, you know what I mean? Which is good because you're helping us to ease back into these different projects and industries and roles, and able to break down those barriers. So again, that is phenomenal. That is great,
It's a lot
a
of work and it
young
is
one.
stressful. It's financially stressful, it is physically stressful, but
Well, I'm
it
sure.
is my purpose. Yeah, it is the purpose that I definitely like. When I was in college, I remember I went to Dartmouth initially, and I went to Howard. I transferred to Howard eventually, but when I went to Dartmouth, I was in a documentary film class. I was the only black person in that class as well. And I was also a part of this organization that would help children of color, African American children who were adopted by white people, to connect with their culture. And so there was a girl who was probably like, I want to say 8 or something like that. And so I would braid her hair and I would, like, just work with her, help her adopted parents who were white to, connect with an African American person. So anyway, I made my first projects. I was 18, 19 years old, and I showed them to her. And then her mom told me that when they went home, that she's like, she said she wanted to be a filmmaker. And her name was Ruby. And I was just like, what? Like, that's crazy. Cause I mean, I was shooting on like VHS tapes, and I mean, I put everything into those VHS tapes. We put everything
Yeah.
into, and they're good films. They're just made on VHS. Like, they're all solid.
Right.
But then a few years later, I found out that she actually went into playwriting. And she ended up, so the 8-year-old girl turned into eventually a 15-year-old girl. And she ended up writing a play that ended up being an off-Broadway theater production at
Wow.
15.
Look
And
at that inspiration, all from
yes,
connecting her to her roots through this program, being this big sister figure,
yeah,
in order for her to unleash those, because maybe she wouldn't have
no,
realized that
I know that's what it
potential
was.
or those
Yeah.
dreams without that connection. So
Mhm.
that was important. That's very important. And I
And it's
think
also, yeah, because
that's
she knew me.
great.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't someone on TV. It was someone that she actually saw. And it's like, and recently I went to this high school in the Bronx to
Mhm.
present the film. And this young woman, she was the only black woman in that class. There was a black male and there were Latino students. And I think that's about it. Yeah, there weren't too many black women in the class. It was a math and science school. Anyway, but the young woman at the end of this current film that I'm promoting, Interception, she just said it more or less to herself. But at the end, like when the credits roll, she goes, "That was beautiful." I
Aw.
was like, oh, it's happening again. And
Yeah.
so it's just, but I want it to be a legitimate occupation that specifically African American women, African Caribbean women, African women, African
Right,
British women.
right.
I want all the Africa people to just decide that they are going to grab the reins of their own story. Yes, we can entertain. Yes, we can present stories that bring about comedy and laughter and different types of dramatic models of love triangles and all that kind of stuff, but
Right,
we really
yeah.
have to think about the
Right.
substance. Like, we need to make stuff that's really going to make it so our people are getting vitamins and minerals. Like, I'm not making anything that's going to bring my people down, that's going to make them wriggle on their bellies, that's going to make it so that they're acting like they're on an auction block. Like, I'm not interested in having
Substance,
people, yeah,
substance, like you
it
said.
has to be
Yes.
substance, and it has to make you feel like, I mean, for example, like one of my two favorite films, Malcolm X and The Wiz. Both of those films are
Oh,
my
yeah.
two favorite films of all time. I
The
love those
Wiz is
films.
one of my favorites as well.
The Wiz,
Yes,
and
yes.
it's because of the soundtrack. In particular, the soundtrack is just like the sequence, right? If you look at the sequence of all the sounds on the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is Quincy Jones, absolutely incredible. And there's many other artists who created the soundtrack, but it's all the different things that we do to escape oppression, right? So there's,
Right.
the woman who is the numbers runner, right? So we're trying to gamble, right? Then there's the poppy seed field. We're trying to do drugs, right? We're trying to do different things. We're trying to because all of them are broken in a way.
Exactly.
The story of the Wizard of Oz period is about people who are missing a heart. They think they're missing a heart, bravery, a mind, and the sense of home, which is a sense of love, right? That's
Right.
what Kansas represents,
Home is
or
where the heart is. Yes.
yeah, that's what Harlem represents to Dorothy, played by Diana Ross. And so it's just, but those are the things those are the only things that you need in life to survive this world. And if you are actually missing this and you're spending your whole life trying to find it, or think that you're missing it, you're trying to find it, then people are always going to introduce you to one of the vices, one of the crafts of the devil to take your soul. But what they find at the
Exactly.
end,
Especially if you don't understand yourself and they feel like they can come in and influence. So I definitely get the way you're trying to influence in a positive, uplifting way, which was something that was mostly done during that time, during that era of struggle.
Sure, yes.
And we're right. We're going through different struggles at this time, but it's still relevant to this
We're
time.
going through the same struggles. It's the same exact issues. It's the same people just trying to talk us out of our minds, our hearts, our love for each other, and our bravery.
Right.
It's all it is. It's like, that's why the Wiz just kind of covers everything, because at the end, like, if when Eveline is destroyed, right, and then all the characters who were working for her, they zip off this caricature suit, which is saying this is how they saw themselves, and they are in their original African garb, and they're saying, it's like, can't you feel a brand new day? Can't you feel a brand new? I mean, it's like they're saying, like, this is who I am in my original form.
Right.
And
embrace who you are and all its beauty, all its
your
glory.
ancestor.
Yes.
So, and it's because it's like the story of human life is not really different. That's why we can read things like the Bible or Shakespeare or some other book that's been hundreds of years, in the past, and it applies to us. Yeah, because there isn't anything new in terms of what people are searching for.
Right.
They're searching for the same things. And so it's so I know that's the feeling of that people get from my films. It's everything I'm saying now, but it's, a big screen. It's a story. It's wrapped in a burrito of a story, right? And so it's very edible and consumable. But the main thing that the purpose of my work is to go and give Black people the feeling of love that was stolen from them, obviously in the slave ships, obviously on the auction block. This is, everybody that you could care about, they were greased and shined up so they could be sold away from you. Like, they presented people who had just been tortured, and they greased them up. They, got their teeth smelling. They did all kinds. They bathed them, right? And then they set them all up on this big wooden, plank. A stage. And then they sat there and systematically sold everybody that you could care about. Everybody. I mean, your mother, your father, your children, your husband, your wife, your brother, your sister, your grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins, best friends, neighbors, everybody that you could care about. And you couldn't reach out for them, either because you were held back or because they would destroy you or them. I mean, this is not like some story of ancient time. This is like my great grandparents, my third great. I mean, these are not the same people who are on our currency, right? Those people would be the seventh great grandparent generation. So if those people's faces are still being printed on greenbacks, we still celebrate President's Day. We still have high schools named after all these people who are legitimately the torturers of African people and Native American people, right?
Wow. You know what? You're really making this, and I don't want to say, but it's true. You're really bringing a lot of points to the forefront, because I don't know if you watch, but what is it? Abbott Elementary.
She's from Philly.
I love that show, right?
Yes.
They
Bright Eyes. I love my Bright Eyes.
I've been
following her career for a long time.
Yes.
She was on BuzzFeed.
I just won an award when you were speaking earlier.
Absolutely.
About,
she's won an
those
Emmy.
gaps in between. And I think they said that the award that she won hadn't been won since, like, was it the 19th?
It was Isabel Sanford. Isabel Sanford won an Emmy before the Jeffersons. And I mean, and I just know, like, who won what. I'm one of those Black people that's like, I know all the Black first because I love Black first. But yeah, Isabel Sanford was the first Black woman to ever win an Emmy, and that was like 1980 something. And yeah, I mean, when probably
40 something years later, and she's so, like you said, filling in those gaps, filling in those holes. But what I was saying was that they recently
for a quality product and for a quality product.
Where they were talking about how these different schools are named after, even my middle school. I know we loved our middle school, but it was named after races who Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, why are we celebrating? So they
If
eventually
you aren't.
renamed the school. So now it's known as College Park Middle School, opposed
Sure.
to it was Robert E. Lee.
Oh
And
God.
we love that school,
One
but
of the
not
worst.
knowing
Yeah.
that we're celebrating this tragedy of a man. You know what I mean? It was not good for our people. So
He's the president of the Confederacy. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's like the real reason that this is important is not just so that people know that other people existed and they did
right.
something. It's to reconnect us, all of us, to whatever we're on this planet for, before we get led astray by thinking. Because is it like the thing is that when you're a group of people who are void of love, right, from your country and then possibly from your family and possibly from the people at school, your neighbors, your environment, all the different places where you find yourself, being reared and cultivated, and you're not getting love, right? What do you turn into? And
Right.
then if someone offers you the some sort of
A
placebo or
fake
some
or
counterfeit, yeah, then it's like, okay, it's the same thing that you do with a dog when you're trying to get them to behave. You're like, hey,
train them.
here's a treat, here's a
Yep.
treat, and that's what they do to us. They have us over here acting a mess because of the treat, and the treat is the idea that you're going to be recognized, loved. I mean, it's not hard. We got a whole generation of Black people sitting here calling each other the N word, the B word, as just like that's everybody's first name, and there's so many other words that we've already come up with that we could we can communicate with one another, and people are really trying to make an argument for this, not realizing that what's the invisible hand saying that if you don't say this word then you won't have a music career. If you don't say this word, you're not going to be considered to be a person who's going to be on television. We're not going to let you be on TV unless you're willing to disrespect your people.
Disrespect.
So
Yep.
and then it's just
But they're
lots of
not going to let you disrespect their people. And
yeah,
they won't
exactly,
want you
never.
to come in because they
Never.
know that
Yep.
there's
Never.
the power in numbers, and we
Mhm.
have strong numbers. We just
Oh
don't
yeah.
have that unity amongst.
We don't have critical thinking. I mean, we just be, the thing is that critical thinking would just take one thing, reading. It would just take reading. It would just be knowing about if you read like Frederick Douglass or something, and you're like, man, how was this book written in like 1830, and the
And
same
it's
thing happened
still
to me like
relevant
last
today.
Tuesday.
It's still
Like
a
this
point.
happened to
It's
me
like
this
he's foreseeing the future. Yes. Mhm.
but what he's talking about, we're all going through, and that's why it was against the law to teach us how to read and write. That's
Right.
why it was a law. It was a law. It wasn't just like a practice or people didn't do it. No, it was a law. Like if you were the person to teach a Black person to read and write, you were
You
breaking
will
the
be
law,
his. Yep.
and the person was breaking the law. Everybody was breaking the law. The
Because like
law.
we already know education, knowledge is
Yeah.
power. So
Yeah.
once that power is unlocked, you would hope that people would utilize it for the greater or the good of their people. Whereas now it's like it's more popular to be an idiot.
Well, it's harder to be a person who is chasing like a love that is very easy to get by being disrespectful. It
Right.
doesn't take much for a brand new rapper to call a Black woman a B, yeah,
Right.
or some other type of disrespectful. It's not hard for a new Black singer woman to go and get as naked as she possibly can and pop booties in the air. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
like, and it's not that. The thing is that I'm a film director. I'm not an actress. Like I've never wanted to be an actress.
Right.
But if I ask an actress to come in and play a nun, she can do that, but she can also play a prostitute.
Right.
It's up because, and she should be able to play both because she's responding to me. I'm the storyteller. So people want to blame actors and talent, and I know it's the person who's crafting the story. Because if the first 10 people came in and said, "I'm not going to play this trash," I'm out of here. You're never going to know about those people. You're only going to know
Right.
about the 11th person
Who
who
does,
took the
who
role.
does the part. And I can speak to that as an actress because that is true. You are taught through your craft to embody, the character and also bring yourself within that role. But at the same time, like myself, there are certain things that no, I'm not going to do that. And you're talking about, oh, well, I'll pay this or I'll pay. So what?
Yep.
Sometimes money does not matter when you have self-respect. But like you said, there are going to be others that are willing to take on different
Absolutely.
projects or roles just because. And those are the ones that you would hear about simply because they were the ones that stepped into that role. But as the writer, as the producers, the
Producer.
directors, yes, the
It's the producer,
responsibility
whoever got the money.
fall.
Who's
Yeah,
the money person? Who's the one bankrolling this bad boy? And I mean,
exactly.
it's only because I play three different, if not four different roles. I mean, I play four different roles: producer, director, writer, and editor. Those are the four roles that I've always, ended up playing with my work. But that's the reason why my work can look the way that it does, because of the fact that I'm the person financing it. I'm the person going forward and crafting the juxtaposition of, light and sound and image and motion, and making it so that the symbolism is, symbiotics. That's the name of, that's what film is. It's symbiotics, right? So it's
Right.
like, because I know that, and I've trained to do that. You know, I went to Howard for film school. I went to Dartmouth for film school. I went to NYU for film school. I've only studied one thing every time I got a chance to study something. So I know what I'm doing. And you know, this isn't the first time that like a film that I've made has like swept film festivals. It's, you know, it'll happen again. It's just, it's not because of anything other than like, it isn't an ego based thing. It's a purpose. Like, you know, every time I was the person to tell the story of somebody else, everyone would elect me to be that person, to, you know, to give the story of another person, to be the person to, you know, conduct all the interviews, to bring everything together, to inspire. And
Okay.
so to make people feel connected to something that really stays with them when they need it the most. I mean, that's what stories do. When you need them the most, is something letting you know, like, you know, you know what's on the other, you know, end of this road if you continue
Right.
down this path, because someone tells you a story of someone who's gone before. So that's definitely, you know, my purpose. There's other purposes, I'm sure. I'm sure I, you know, I'll probably make a mean apple pie or something like that. I'm sure I got other talents and skills, but filmmaking takes up so much energy. I think that's all I can get done in this lifetime. Anyhow, maybe I could,
And
you
I was
know,
going to actually ask you, because
lost my teeth or something.
speaking
That's
of
about
your
it.
energy and, you know, being able to bring, you know, this documentary, you know, to the light,
Mhm.
are there other projects that you're working on, or is this keeping you pretty, I guess, you know, busy?
I mean, I would say both are true. It's that it's like, because what I have to do is I'm not a person who subscribes to like a capitalistic society business model. And what I mean by that is that I'm not a person who's like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And you know, it's like, you know, you got to be at work all the time. I'm like, no, like I actually got to drink water and eat healthy food, and I, you know, got to take an Epsom salt bath, and I have to jog. Like, I'm into creating the story of my life is also a film. The story of my physical health is also a film. And then, so yes, the film is certainly taking over a great deal of my life, which I'm happy it is. I'm happy that this is happening. And then after that, I always have other stories, which are always about the same thing. It's always about just reinstating the bonds of love between Black people. So it could be a parent-child story. It could be a, you know, husband-wife story. It could be a grandparent-grandchild. It could be best friends. It could be coworkers. It's not always the same obvious stuff over and
Right.
over again for me, because I think that it's all those different bonds of love that keep us going. I don't think that love comes from people. I think love comes from God. And then if
Mhm.
somebody is in alignment with that, with God, then love will course through them. And, you know, then you'll have a loving exchange with them. If love is coursing through you, then you'll have a loving exchange. But if they turn their back on God, then you're not that source. You know, they could be a conduit for the love of God, but because they're turning their back on God, they can't be right now until they change again.
Change,
So
yeah.
that's the main,
And
the
people go through
underlying.
that, right? We
Yeah.
all have cycles of which it's up and down, or we have changes or life experiences that influx us. So we go, you know, up and down with different emotions or feelings, even attachments to love, whether it's
Yeah.
relationships amongst, you know, family, or you know, your love relationships, even relationships with your children or friends.
Everybody.
So that
Right.
is just an ever evolving thing with as being a human. Something
Mhm.
that I love to always say is that, you know, I'm not God, but I'm of God, meaning that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right, that God is within me. And so, you know, I want to be able to be that inspiration, that love, that light for others.
Mhm.
And I try to be, you know, and sometimes, like, we're human. Everybody has
Yeah.
their days, you know,
Absolutely.
but it's definitely a process. It's a
And
process.
that's what that's and so all my films are about they're coming from that place,
Okay.
and they always will. So, you know, the thing is, I have to I'm putting things in position. So at the same time I'm making a film, I have to build the infrastructure to make a film. So the
Okay.
infrastructure starts with just like my physical body, like my mind, body, and soul, and my spirit, all being, you know, having some kind of homeostasis. And then after that, it's the house that's wrapped around me, or it's the car
Right.
that's wrapped. I have to go manage the things that get me to a place where I can make films again. And of course, you know, it's money, but it's really resources. Resources are actually more important than money when you're making films. And at the same time, I'm trying to help, you know, especially other Black filmmakers get their projects. I mean, I just got the phone with a brother who's from Cameroon, and you know, he's making a documentary. I'm going to edit the documentary. I'm about to get off this call and go to my other friend who she's applying for a job. She's a filmmaker. Like, I'm always trying to reach as I
Helping
climb.
and lending out
Yeah,
those
it's
talents, which is
100%.
important, because you want to be able, like you said, bridge those gaps,
Mhm.
lend your talents,
Mhm.
help others to you know, impact and advance in their areas, so that we can conquer this thing one movie, one
Yeah,
project,
storm the
one
castle.
role at a time.
Yeah, we have
Yes.
to. I mean, and you know, another thing about Jane, for example, which was not in the film, but I always like to mention this, is that so when you're an anchor person, they give you like hair, makeup, and clothing. So there's
Okay.
different sponsors who give you those things when you're working at, CBS National in particular. But they didn't give those things to Jane. They didn't give her a clothing sponsor. And so she went to a Black fashion designer. Now she didn't have to. She could have gone to all the white fashion designers in the world.
Right.
And they would have been happy to dress her. But she went to a Black fashion designer, and their name was in the credits of CBS every time she appeared, which gave them national exposure, in dressing the Black woman. And I think they were based in New York. I'm pretty sure that they were based in New York. But yeah, I mean, it's just, that's the type of, she was in the middle of trying to figure out how to be a sportscaster and how to get this job and how to keep this job and all that. And even in that process of trying to do that, she was still helping other Black people.
Raising other
That's just
people up.
one example. Like Jane Kennedy,
you have to.
her last name now is
That's what they
Overton.
say. You have to try to bring your people along, those that are
She has,
deserving to come
100%.
because you can't.
And it is, but if there's someone who's not deserving, you just have to find another Black person who is.
Right.
That's all it comes down to. It's just like, we can't be a people. If every time I have a project, I give all the roles to not another group of people, and then every time they have a project, they give those same roles to another group of people. Then when will the experience come? When will we get great Black? When we won't have multiple options of great Black cinematographers, great Black editors. We won't have them if we don't cultivate them. We cultivate them by giving them experience. And, I went to multiple film schools, trained with, some Spike Lee, John Singleton, Casey Lemons, M. Night Shyamalan, Haile Garima, Bill Duke. These are people, and Suzanne DePass. These are people who are my professors, who I was like, I can't believe I'm in this room right now. I mean, it was like, I remember at Howard,
knowledge. Yeah,
like I had a class with E.R. Braithwaite, and he wrote To Sir with Love, and To Sir with Love turned into a film that Sidney Poitier played him in the film. And so I signed up for his class at Howard, and I was like, I came like 3 hours early to an empty room because I was like, I'm gonna be here, I'm in front row center, fresh notebook, fresh everything. I was like, whatever he says.
But the thing is that you were able to realize that opportunity and take advantage. That is one thing that really vexes me with people when they have opportunities and they don't understand the opportunity that they have. You recognize that, you took a hold of that, you embraced it, you're embodying it through your different projects because you were able to be or have access to these people in order to hone into your craft. So we have to, as people, realize opportunity, and sometimes they're not as great as that opportunity of being amongst these, legends now in this industry. But you still have to be willing to, take the opportunities for what they are, no matter how, I don't want to say small, because no opportunity is small. It is what you do with the opportunity, but just being, being able to look at that as an opportunity and go from there, grow from there.
Right. And it's also, but it's about, what are you pouring into yourself? Like in order for you to be a good storyteller, you have to be a reader. You have to be somebody who avails themselves to different types of artwork, different, everything from plays to sculpture, everything from Cirque du Soleil or someone, like, I would say Soul Circus.
All around artists.
You have to be exposed to other types of art and because that's the symbolism of how they express something in a cave drawing, right? Like I know what they're drawing. I understand, okay, I get it. That's an antelope and that's a man. Like I understand from the,
right,
a cave drawing, what's going on. So you have to expose yourself to lots of forms of art, as well as stories of the Bible, of the Quran, of the the Torah, the sutras, the Dhammapada, like different religions that are not even in the Judeo-Christian fashion, African religions, Native American religions, Asian religions. You have to understand, why were these stories held close to people's hearts for thousands of years? Why would this story be so important? But those stories, if you're able to wrap a modern tale on top of the core of those original stories, right? Like Greek and Roman mythology, there's African mythology. You have to know why people cared about these different things. The stories of Egypt, a myriad of others. There's so many. But
you want to open up your mind, you have to learn storytelling. You want to open up your spirit to these, right? And I definitely understand that. In order to get a whole or a full or a better concept,
you want to be a great filmmaker. If your goal is to be a great filmmaker, if your goal is to just record something and then throw it all over the place and be like, you're
not gonna work.
It's not, because it's like there's structure. Yeah, there's story structure, and once you grasp story structure, there's an equation to moving people emotionally, right? I mean, and people who are fashion designers know this. You know how like we see people who are like walking down a runway and their stuff that looks crazy. You're like, oh, I'm not gonna wear that. They just being outlandish. It's because it's like there's a shape that people are trying to achieve in their design. There's, there's things you can do with color theory to shape the way that the person looks in this particular outfit. There's this, the belt does this, and like the lapels do this, and
Right.
a solid color does this. Like you have to understand what shadow and light. They have to understand shadow and light the same way that I do as a filmmaker. They have to understand it for fashion, and I have to understand it for film, and someone else has to understand it for a portrait painting, and someone else has to understand it for designing a car, and someone else has to understand it for doing makeup, another person has to understand it for doing hair. I mean, it's just all of these things are coming from the same math, if you will. It's the same, wavelengths of sound, wavelengths of light, and
applying
what
it
that
to
does.
different industry or different
How that makes us feel.
artistry.
Yeah, how that makes us feel. How does that make us feel? And it's the same thing that people who make fragrances, it's the same people who are doing massage therapy. It's your five senses. How do you, and then if you can beguile the five senses, then where are you leading people? That's
Right.
where your character comes in. So it's like, in the cartoons, they got that like that little wave of like the scent, and then like Bugs Bunny starts like floating
Right.
around or something, that kind of thing. So it's like if I'm going to be a snake charmer and I'm going to play a song that the snake is going to come out, then where am I leading? Where am I leading people? So that's what you have to ask yourself first, is like, it's like there's another story like Pied Piper and
Letting the
Hamlin.
story flow, being able to really depict and stretch out,
Well,
not stretch out, but demonstrate the story or show the story.
well, not just showing the story, but once you get people's attention, where are you bringing them? So it's like the story of Pied Piper Hamlin Town. It's a person who has a flute. He has a flute, and then all the rats in the town,
Yeah.
they all come and follow him into the ocean. He's trying to drown them, right? If you look at Hansel and Gretel, the story of Hansel and Gretel, it's a house made out of candy, and it's so beautiful, and two little kids are attracted to it. If they go inside the house, they're going to be eaten, boiled alive. They're going to become her dinner. And so you have to see like that, the power that you have to move people's senses, whether it's one sense or it's all five senses, right? Whatever it is, on whatever level. To me, my purpose is to bring people back to God, to bring them back and restore them and let them know, hey, you always had a heart. You always had a brain. You already had courage. You always had love/home. It's the same
Let me ask
story.
you this. So if you were to sum up your documentary based on Jane Kennedy's life, what, or the portion that you depicted in your story, what would be that one word that you would say to summarize that depiction?
The depiction is definitely one of resilience. And resilience is that first word, because it's just they really did try to break her heart.
Right.
And essentially what they tried to do was to blame her being fired from the show on her, and it was not her fault at all. She got fired. And so it's a gaslighting, but it's a gaslighting on the world. I mean, at the time that the film takes place, there's only 3 TV networks. It's nothing like it is now with like 100,000 streaming. I mean, everything. I think I'm about to start a streaming network tomorrow. I mean, everything is a streaming network, just waiting to happen. There was only 3 networks, so it's not like she can go to another place and have another job. There's only 3 networks in town, and so where is she going to go when they take this away from her? All the dominoes fall, and whatever amount of crying that she went through, or self-pity, was very brief before she got right back up and found another way. I mean, so at the very beginning of the film, she's like, she says, my parents told me, if that way doesn't work, figure out another way to do it. That's why the film starts that way, because that is the story of who she is, and she didn't know which path to go next, but she was committed to moving forward, to going forward and getting something that was big and great and bold. And if anything, it's like the fact that people would hurt her feelings, that would become fuel for her to come back even more, fire. Yeah. And it's, I mean, people when people watch this film, I've gotten standing ovations from this film. People are clapping in the middle of the film. People are crying at the end of the film. I cry at the end of the film. I've seen the film more than anyone else, and I'm still crying at the end of the film, because it's just the
that
feeling.
Impactful, that powerful.
Yeah.
Tell us, well, I know you said that right now it's going through the circuits.
Yeah, so it'll be in California, Cleveland, and New York. Those are the next, and in Atlanta. It'll be in those 4 cities next.
And tell our viewers where they can follow you or, get information on you.
Okay, sure. So Instagram, and I think my name is at the bottom of this. Maybe it's not, but my name, my name is spelled Safiya, And my last name is Songhai. And I'm only on Instagram and Facebook. I can't do too many other things. That's
Right.
enough. That's enough.
Okay.
It's already too time consuming. Oh my gosh.
I feel you. I understand.
Yes.
So
But my
one thing that I've
yeah.
been liking to do, since we've now changed our name, can you tell us one of your best kept secrets? It can relate to, the industry. It can relate to this project. What are one of your best kept secrets?
Best kept secrets. Okay, I would say, okay, for my editing side of life, I'm gonna give you two. I'm gonna give you two,
Okay.
maybe three. I might give you three.
Okay.
Okay, so
Give it all you got.
all right, so editing, the best kept secret if you're editing something, right? So of course there's the part that you intended to shoot, right? And then there's like pre-roll and post-roll. Look at every single frame. The second that the camera starts recording, take note of every single thing because everything is useful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if there is some sort of trail off or people, the cameraman or woman brings the camera down and the camera's sitting on the ground, make note of that. When I do my transcripts, I don't, if I say cut, which I'm the one saying cut, I don't say that that's the end of the scene. The scene obviously ended, but there's still this trail and I might be able to use that.
Okay.
So in nearly every film I've ever made, there has been some pre-roll or post-roll that I have ended up using pieces of it. So I remember this one film I made, and the woman that played the actress who played the character, she looked up at the camera because she was, I said something to her and she looked up at the camera, but we ended up being able to use that as a transition to get to the other scene because it was just perfect, like the way she did it. So I always take note of the things that seem to be mistakes, the things that seem to be pre-roll, post-roll. If there is any level of audio or video recording, I take note of it in my transcript, in my tape log, because I can use it in editing. In terms of being a producer, do not think ever, ever, ever that producing requires money. It does require resources, okay? And if you're going to put your resources on anything, make sure that your sound is clean. If you're going to put anything on anything, make sure that sound is clean. And then look at the different techniques that you can, how to illustrate something. If you're going to, your film requires, the lighting is telling you if it's a comedy or if it's a drama or what have you. So you have to get your lighting correct. You have to understand lighting. If you want to make a film and you're like, oh, it's whatever, just put a light up. Don't approach it that way. It'll automatically look amateur. So it's like the main thing is the order of operations is it's story, then performance. And then after that, it's cinematography and sound. And you have to get A's on those things in order for people to respect your work in that order. It's not, if people just have a bunch of pretty stuff happening and there's no story, they get bored.
Right.
But if your technical stuff isn't that strong, but the story is hot, people will watch to the end.
Right.
So it's story, then performance, and then it's cinematography and sound. And it could even be sound and cinematography. People will actually watch something where the video has gone out and the sound is still playing normally. But if the video keeps going and the sound drops out, people are like, what's going on? So it's just, those are those things. Let's see, producing, editing, and then directing. So directing, you always want to create some sort of, if you have a conflict situation between two characters, you sometimes want to direct both of them differently so that they don't know what's going on. I learned this from Steven Spielberg when he was talking about The Color Purple. So the scene where like Celie and Nettie are being torn apart and then Mr. has to go and like pound on her hands and she's like, why? Well, she's saying that, right? That's Akosia Bussier playing Nettie. And then the sister who played young, see, I can't think of her name right now, but oh, I forgot her name. I'm so sorry. I used to know her name all the time. But anyway, it's not Whoopi Goldberg. It's the woman who plays the younger version.
Yeah.
But they were both directed separately. They were both directed in a way they were like, okay, whatever you do, don't let him separate you. So they thought that was how everyone was directed. But Danny Glover was told, now whatever you do, separate them. And so when he pulls her fingers back and pulls her off, she's like, what are you, like, she's thinking, why are you doing this? Like, this is not in real time. She's wondering what's going on, but it looks realistic. So you do have to sometimes direct talent in opposite ways in order for them to be realistic. And then also with talent that maybe are not as well versed in acting and they get nervous and all that kind of stuff, sometimes you have to make them not know that you're recording them. So I would always work with my DP whenever, because I have a mixed bag of actors. Like some actors would be, from Juilliard or NYU or Howard or something, like they were ready to go. And others I was like, oh, you have the look, I would be like pounding on the MTA windows of the train. And I'm like, it's you, I'm a filmmaker. You got to be in my movie. I'm going to run to the next station and you get off and I'll give you my business card. Like I would just track people down in a crowd because they look like someone, but they couldn't act, but they look look like what I wanted. And then I had to rise up as a director to make sure that their performance was strong. And in doing so, I have to make them think that there's no, like, this thing, we're not recording. So I'll be like, oh, look, we're just doing an
It's in
eyeline
real
test.
time. This is life, and you're just going through it. Yes,
I
and
wouldn't tell
that's
anyone.
the power of a
Yeah.
director. That
But
really is.
I wouldn't even be telling anyone except for the DP that we're recording. So everyone thought we were just like doing nothing. And so
Going
I
through
would,
the motions.
yes, going through, I mean, we wouldn't even be doing the scene. I just needed them to look natural, and natural. I was just like, we're just doing an eyeline test. We just have to do that. And then other people would be talking on set and doing everything else. But I would, yeah, I just knew that I had to get them
On
to
who
bring
you
them down because they
physically.
were doing too much. When they said action, they were like, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, nah, man, come on, let's dial it down. But that was my fault as the director for casting them. I was casting someone who wasn't familiar. And, so now I have to adjust in order to get them there. And then the other thing is that you want to bring people, it's not just talent that's walking in the door. You got to find out your actor's life story. Like, what is their deal? So that you can find ways to connect them. Like, you have to, you made your character on paper, but they're going to inhabit that character. So now you might have to change what you wrote to match this individual human being that you cast. So I will totally let the dialogue change, and the way that they, things that are naturally a part of this particular person, I will then rewrite my script so that it matches this human being. And every time I do that, people are like, oh, this is amazing. And I'm like, I mean, it's just really about recognizing that you have all these great, you're a conductor, you have these great violins, and this, fantastic, this drummer over here, and this person playing the triangle, and this person playing, I don't know, the bass guitar, whatever they got in classical music. And you just have to basically, they're going to
Put the
do their
orchestra
job.
together and
Yeah.
play that. Yes,
You
yes.
have to
I love
conduct, you have
that.
to be a
I
conductor.
love
You
that.
have to
Those
do
are
that.
some helpful tips, not only for the watchers, but as an actress, an artist, from that perspective, just being able to understand those breakdowns. Because as a director, or I would say, when you're trying to relate to because each director is different, right? And you want
Yeah.
to be able to give your best performance. But again, it does still tie back to, like you said, making those interactions, making those connections so that it is more believable, more real, more authentic. So yes,
You don't want to break your actor down. You want to change the story to connect with what they naturally have going on. Definitely the secrets, if you will, like the best kept secret when it comes to directing, I think, is that once you cast the people that are going to play the roles in a fiction project, you need to find out what are their hidden talents, what kinds of things, what's their backstory, what's their life about. So then you take that and then you rewrite your script based on these natural gems that they offer, right? So if I have a character, or an actor rather, who has an accent, now I'll go back and rewrite the character to now have this very natural accent that they already possess, right? And then if they can sing, if they can, I don't know, play the flute or whatever, I'll have a moment in the film where I can demonstrate whatever it is that they bring to the table. And the original character was just a stick figure, it was just an outline, it was just an idea. And now I have a real person in front of me with real gifts. Why would I leave those gifts, under the Christmas tree? Like, let's unwrap those gifts, let's employ those gifts, So that's a big part of directing, is recognizing that the way I direct is I'm not trying to shape and mold people like a Gumby doll. I'm not trying to break them out that fast. Like, I'm just like, let me find out what they bring to the table. And then I'm going to build a team that allows them their time on the Soul Train line to do their dance,
Right.
So that's, but I have to weave it into the bigger story. Like, I always have to keep the bigger picture in my mind. And then, we're filling it in with all this talent, the sound recordist, the people who are doing the score, the people who are doing the lighting, the people who are all these different things. But I actually have to find that out about both my cast and crew. What other things are they capable of?
Well, like you said before, it's like being able to know where you're going in the story. So you definitely have to kind of have that end result in mind. So I definitely understand that. Thank you for those nuggets. Thank you for those, those gems, as they would say, as far as those best kept secrets, because like I said, I think it would be insightful for anyone listening, as well as anyone that's within the industry.
Right.
I did want to ask you another thing. So we were talking, and I was, saying about your name, like, I love to call you Safiya, which that's not your name, Safiya.
I support.
Yes, but your last name,
Yeah.
Songhai. I was thinking that it was probably Asian, and you said that it is derived from.
So okay, so my production company is called Empire Films. And that is connected to Songhai, which is Songhai Empire, which the empire, it's an empire in West Africa that was home to, it's no longer a country, it's in now present day Mali, but it's a place where people would come together to learn and study. And so people would send their children to Timbuktu, which was the capital of the Songhai Empire. And
right,
it is also a place.
Why
Yes.
all this time I've been thinking Timbuktu was just something that your parents came up with when they wanted to make you feel like, hey, I'm just going to ship you off somewhere.
Ship you off, yeah, that's what it was. So the idea was that, so like the statement that you're saying, right? So if this kid in America was acting up, usually, especially, I mean, Black people and white people say this. I've seen it in movies and TV and all that kind of stuff, books. But the idea was that, like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. You are just a mess as a kid. I'm gonna have to ship you off to Timbuktu. But Timbuktu was a real place where people would send their children to be educated. And the thing about Timbuktu was that both male and female children, as well as the rich and the poor, middle class, whatever your background was, if you showed promise in a specific arena, then you would be sent to Timbuktu or to Djenné. Djenné was the other capital, but Timbuktu was the larger capital in the Songhai Empire. And this is around the 1400s, 1500s. And then the Timbuktu and Songhai Empire eventually, it suffers during the slave trade, during the transatlantic slave trade. This is what brings down the Songhai Empire. But Timbuktu is still a real place. It still exists. There's still people there. There are people who are Black Americans who genetically come from, what was once the Songhai Empire. And Mansa Musa, they're making a film about him. Ryan Coogler's making a film about him. You know how like the Woman King with Viola Davis, that's a real place. That was Dahomey. That's the Dahomey Empire. Now I don't know if the story matches what really went down. Like, Black people did not write that film, but they did direct it, and they did. Gina Prince Blythewood directed it. Viola Davis was also a producer as well as an actress on it, and they had some really brilliant talent. So but the story of the Dahomey people and the Songhai people, the people from Angola, Ya Santua, Queen Nzinga, Mansa Musa, Sundiata, these are all major players and they stood up against European forces, and they prevailed against European forces in the transatlantic slave trade. Like, don't let people think that we didn't fight back. That's all. Like, anybody who says that is crazy talk. I mean, we fought back and won many battles. There's no end to a conflict. Like, at the end of the day, there's just an end to a war. People go rest and they come back and fight again. That's why we have all these different, problems that go on for centuries, because there isn't really an end to a war. It's just people just decide, okay, you know what, I'm gonna stop fighting right now, but they're getting their strength back up. So it's like we didn't lose in the way that people would like for us to internalize. But we had these great empires, and people were going. No one kidnapped people from Africa because they saw a bunch of duds. They went to Africa and they were like, man, these people are great.
Right.
They were like, exactly. Oh my goodness. Like,
and like you said, it all comes back to understanding who you are and your roots and what you're tied to, which is in your name. So you're definitely a woman king in my book.
No, I don't want to be a woman king. I don't want to be nobody's woman
warrior.
No, no. I mean, it's just like, but you just have to recognize, like, it's not about, like, I'm not interested in the monarchy concept. You know what I mean? That's a European concept. It really is. It's a European concept. But it's like the idea that rule should be based on demonstration of talent, of being a protector, right? It shouldn't just be because you were born to somebody else who was running things. That doesn't make any sense, right? So it's like, people do it, but it doesn't make any sense. You should elect leaders based on their demonstration of their talent, their ability, their ingenuity, their leadership in terms of strategy, bringing a group of people from point A to point B. And I definitely connect with that. So, I mean, I definitely connected with the story of the Songhai people. And I knew that was something that could be cut and paste into any era of time. And, I am an educator. I am a person who I want Black people to gain wealth in a capitalistic society for their talents. I don't want them to just
be your next project, something about seriously, because it's already in you, your DNA, like it's a part of you. So I think that would definitely be a great story for you to tell and get us to that ending. Because I was, when you told me that, I'm like, what is that? Even about the Timbuktu, I'm like, really? That was a real I don't know how many people really knew that, because like I said, I know that my mom would use the phrase sometimes, even my grandmother, especially when talking to her grandchildren, great grandchildren, when they were misbehaving or something like that. Hey, I'm going to send you to, and I'm just thinking, okay, that's just something make-believe place that, that adults come up with.
And there's a company, there's different businesses that have adopted the name Timbuktu.
Wow.
Because, and just, I mean, when you think about the fact that Timbuktu does not exist in the way it did in the 1500s, but that's how significant Timbuktu was,
Wow.
that 500 years later, that's a lot of time later.
It is
People are still, I
definitely,
mean, once they
definitely.
hear of the story, they're like, oh, I'm going to go name my coffee shop that. I'm going to name my clothing line that. Like when Black people hear the story of Timbuktu, which is just a Wikipedia article, it's not like, you don't have to go get a PhD in it. But you don't have to get, there's not a lot that Black people have to get caught up on as much as they like, I mean, it will take about a year of just concerted effort and reading about your history to then have the full glory of the height of Black people. Because we're not really like, we're Black in a way that is deeper than a color, right? Like if you think of the value of Black, right? Black is all the colors saturated together. It's also like if you look at topsoil that is the darkest it can be, it has the most nutrients. Anything that is highly pigmented is rich in vitamins and minerals. It's wealthy, right? So it's like, people were trying to put Black on us like we were a stain, like we,
Mhm.
the idea of us being, our soul being without light, right? But the thing is that if you are connected to the light, you will become dark. That's the
Right.
benefit. Like, it's like your skin will show that it can absorb. You're not fighting. If you're fighting with the sun, your skin blisters and peels. That's what
Mhm.
happens. If your skin is prepared to absorb the light of God, the light of the enlightenment, as well as the light of the sun, the physical light, as well as deeper light, then you will show it in the saturation of color. That's what Black really we should change the meaning of Black. If we're working on changing meanings, we should really understand that, that if we're going to call ourselves Black in any way, shape, or form, Black really means a great wealth. It's the wealth of all the light waves being absorbed and having the capacity to absorb great light, great wisdom, the wisdom of the ancients, the wisdom of God, and realize your purpose. That's the way I perceive capital B Black to be. But that becomes from, being a person who cares about history, cares about sociology, cares about ancient civilizations, as well as recent past, as well as what's happening right now. And and just really understanding, like, it's not that you're trying to battle another group of people, but we are the first group of people on the earth. They're
Right.
like, there's a reason for that. The very first group of people on the earth, they look like Lupita Nyong'o and Jaimin Hansu and, Viola Davis. And, they look like Gabor Sidibe. That's the color,
Right.
consistent color of the very first, Adam and Eve people on this planet earth. And I
Mm.
feel like there's a great responsibility, when you have been given that shade, when you've been given that clear calling, out of the womb, like you're a part of this people, you have to be a leader to lead all the other people who are,
Yes.
not as connected to the light.
Yes, well, I definitely love that. Listen, let us continue to absorb this light. I appreciate for your light and you shining that upon us this evening. Is there anything or any last thoughts that you want to leave with our viewers tonight?
Yes. I mean, I would say that as a filmmaker, I definitely see myself as an artist that is like anything else. I just paint with shadow and light. And that's the same way that, I think that God has painted us. Like, we also have to go through the shadows in this world. And then, with the shadow of death is always looming. And then, but without the shadow of death, we don't appreciate the light. We have no chance of appreciating the light without great suffering, great calamity. So all kinds of things that we're like, why? But if you're able to see that you're trying to prove to God that you still believe in God in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the heartbreak, in the middle of the devastation, that to me is what is going to count, when we take our last breath. So that's all my films are coming from that. I'm not trying to just entertain people. I'm trying to bring people back to the light as I find it myself.
Exactly. I love that. That was beautiful. Yes. Well, it's definitely been a pleasure reconnecting with you again. I know that we're going to continue to stay in contact. And I do want to make sure that I'm able to catch one of those festivals and see the
Yes.
project. I have seen a few clips, but not in its entirety. But I'm inspired by you. And I pray that you continue to, shed that light and guide those that are coming under you. Like you said, you have a few friends that are interested in becoming filmmakers and different things themselves. So I definitely applaud those efforts. I want to thank everybody tonight for tuning in again for Synoria's Best Kept Secret podcast. Make sure that you guys click the link, share, follow, like, comment, all that good stuff. We want the support and we love you guys for watching. Everybody have a good night.
You're watching 24/7 Live Culture.